So, hey everyone, today we're doing something a little bit different. So, I decided that a friend of mine, whose Discord server I will link in the description, they've started doing these sort of daily programming challenges, and I thought that it would be a good idea to actually create a video on this, just walking through, showing my own thought process for either general programming or Roblox related scripting, sort of my general thought process and how I go through these issues. So I'm going to be starting each of these videos by just sort of going through the prompt and my initial thoughts. So the prompt is to create a program that takes an input height and creates a pyramid with a space in between. And the example is below, where we're given an input of 5. So that would be 5 layers. And then the output is as you can see, one hash sign, then 2, 3, 4, and then 5. So the first thing that I'm going to be looking at is, well, it seems pretty obvious, at least in the context of Roblox Studio and regular Lua, that this is going to be some sort of print operation, at least for us. Now to create this pyramid, we can't just say like, okay, so start at 1 and then go all the way to 5 and then make a for loop. The problem with that is that, well, the spaces are not going to be aligned. So there's an amount of space here that decreases over time, and we have to account for that. So my initial thought is that, hey, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 spaces, and then the hash sign, a space, and then a hash sign. So we have in this layer 4 spaces, 1 hash, 1 space, 1 hash. In this layer, we have 3 spaces, 2 hash, 1 space, 2 hash. Ooh, did not mean to do that. Or that. And so on and so forth, right? So we have 2, then 3, 1, 3. So the number of spaces for each iteration decreases by 1. The number of hashes increases by 1. The 1 space here remains the same. And then the hashes afterward is just, well, we will continue from there, right? So there's no need to do some extra calculations for that. So I think the general process is going to be 1. We will iterate n times, where n is input. So 5 with our example input is going to give us 5 layers total. For each n iteration, we will start by putting n minus m, where m starts at 1. So n minus 1 initially, so we will have, in this case, input of 5. We will start with 4 spaces, then m inputs, so that would be our hash signs, a space, then m inputs again. Let's put this on a, then m inputs again. So after that, we should get what we want, and then at the end we should, of course, increase m by 1 until, let's see, do we want m to equal n or to be less than or equal to? We want m to be until m is greater than n, because our last iteration is when n minus m equals 0, which is the 5th layer, because then we will have 0 spaces at the beginning. So after that iteration, we increase m by 1. At that point, m would be 6, which is less. So we can check m greater than n, or we could do m minus n is equal or is less than 0. But this will be our general algorithm. So local function, we'll call this print pyramid, and this will give us an input of, let's say, layers. We'll call it layers. And before I continue, I am going to take a look at something. Programming in Lua. There you go. It's a little bit cut off at the bottom, but that's fine. So we want a generic for or numeric for. Let's see. A numeric for has the following syntax: expression 1, expression 2, expression 3 do. Okay. And then expression 3 is the increment. Okay. Okay. So I think what I am going to do. So the syntax that we're given is we do for expression 1, expression 2, expression 3 do end, right? So we'll do for, sorry about that. We'll do for, we'll call it n, as we said, is equal to layers. So we'll set a local, and we can make some micro optimizations by making this local n 0. Start by setting this to 0. And we want n to be, we want layers to be greater than n. So we start at 5. So let's see. So we start this at 5. 5 is not greater than n. So we will decrease this. So n starts at 5. We want n to be greater than 0. Greater than or equal to 0. So we start at 5. So this is going a little bit off track from what we initially wanted. But this should still work. So we start this at layers. And we want this to actually start at layers -1. And let's put this in parentheses just so Lua keeps track of that. Makes this a little bit more organized. So we start at layers -1. So we'll start at 4 spaces. Then we'll go down to 3, 2, 1, and 0. And we want it to be greater than or equal to 0. So once it reaches 0, that will be the last layer. And then after that, it will end. So we will say our local, we can create a long string, and that's actually how we need to do that, because a print will automatically go to a new line if it's different. So we will say local result string is equal to that. And we can say for m equals, let's see, 0, we want it to go to n, and we can do m plus 1 do. Can we make this local? Oh. We're doing some funky stuff here. I've never really messed around with plain Lua like this. So we create an expression at 0, and we go until n. And we might need to run this twice, actually. Because we need to run it once. We need to run it once for the spaces, which is always shrinking. Okay, yes. So this initial, sorry, I blanked out for a second. So we need one for loop that's going to increase or start from 0 to n. That's going to be our spaces. So we can say that this starts at n, this goes up until n, and this increases by 1 every time. And we will say result string plus equals to 1 space. Now we will say local O. These variable names are not great, but and we will do, let's see, layers minus n. So this starts at 5, this starts at 4, right? So we start this at 0. So we can say for 0, 0, 1, do. Does that even work? No, this needs to be... Actually, what we can do is that we can just set m back to 0 here. We can reuse m here. M plus equals 1 or plus 1. M is less than. So layers should be a number. N should be a number. Do I need to set this manually to 0 to make this happy? Yeah, that's weird. Lua for loops are funky. What? Okay. M is less than O. Do we want M is less than O? Yes. And actually, can we just do that? Yes. From 0 to O. And this might need some revision. I'm not entirely sure if this loop is going to work the first time around, but that's fine. So let's start at 0, and this will print out the hash signs. So result string plus equals our hash sign. So this will go until the layers minus n. So this will initially start at 1. Then increase, because layers is changing, but layers is not changing, but n is decreasing by 1 every single cycle. And we actually need to run this twice. But the thing is that we only need to run the space once. So I can't just say for another variable equals 2. I'm not a really big fan of copying code. I mean, what we could do is that we could just completely move this to a separate function. That could work as well. At the end of the day, we would have to call this twice. So I think for now, I'm just going to say, we'll just copy and paste this. I know that it's a cardinal sin for programmers to copy code instead of reusing code and all that. But that's what we're going to do right now. And then at the end, we'll print our result string. So walking through the code once again, we start at 0. Or we start at layers minus 1, right? So this is going to be our n variable. We start at 4 because the first step of our pyramid, we would print nothing. So we start at layers minus 1. We go until n is greater than or equal to 0, and I think we can actually just do 0 instead of running an expression there, yes. Until n is equal to, well, actually, no, we need n is until -1. Because we still want it to run at the 0 if the 0th, when n is 0. And then we decrease it by 1, and we create a new string. We first start by creating the spaces. Then we create all the hash signs. We add a space in between, and we create the same hash signs again. And in between here, m is equal to 0, so we actually reset it. So we don't need to run this resetting call here. We're just reusing m here the whole time because we can reset it. We have to reset it for some reason. Unless there's something in Lua that I'm missing here, or Roblox editor is just being weird. And we go until layers minus n, right? So this is going to start at 5 minus 4, so that's 1, then 5 minus 3, that's 2, then 5 minus 2, that's 3, and then it'll go all the way until, because it depends on n, right? So n at the least can be 0, so that will be 5 minus 0, so that would do 5 times. And then at the end, we print the result. So let's give it a shot. I'm kind of funky on and actually, this will actually do nothing until we do print pyramid, and we'll do 5. Why not? And there's probably some other things I can do to make sure that layers is actually a number, because if you put in some other value, Lua will just say it's fine, but then once the function goes through, it'll break. But for now, I'm just going to press run and see what comes out. Okay, so we are unable to do arithmetic on string. So I don't think compound operators work on strings yet. I know that they do work on numbers. Let's see if this fixes it. This should just automatically default to concatenation, or basically just joining the strings together. Okay, so it still doesn't work. So we're gonna have to do string.concat. What is the one that we want? Well, looks like we're going back to here. String concat. Oh no, because we need to do. I'm sorry. My brain is like in some other language right now. Result string. We need to do that, right? Result string. We need to do that. So we need to add it's the two dots to concatenate strings in Lua, not plus signs. Sorry about that. Probably just wasted precious time. Why is it still not working? Let's see. Oh. So string, and we need to reassign it. That should be the rest of it. We should be fine now. Okay. Let's see what happened. So it starts at 2. So this is actually, so we're starting at and Roblox's thing is probably not the best to look at. And I can zoom in on it. Okay, nice. And let's make this lower, drag this lower. So we're actually not getting, are we getting the proper amount? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Seems like we're only getting 4 spaces. And we're starting off with 2, which is weird. So I think we actually want to start M at 1 in order for it to do our proper. In order for it to do the proper thing. Well, I guess not, because that just completely broke our pyramid. Okay, so let's revert this back to 0. So starting at 0, so this printed 2, well, it started properly, right? So I think we should actually keep that. It printed properly, but this isn't incrementing properly, which is interesting. So maybe we want this to stop at 0 instead of -1. And we'll see what that turns out to be. Okay, seems like we're getting closer. I'm not sure. I think what we can do is that we can print, so we can say number of spaces, and we can do to string M. So we're getting the correct number of tabs. I'm just not entirely sure whether or not we're getting the correct number of spaces. It could be just a Roblox Studio thing, and we could actually be getting the right number of spaces. So I'm just going to check it numerically and hope this works. I hope that M retains its original value, which it should afterwards because it's set outside. So I'm hoping that this returns the value that we need, just so we can take a look. Okay, so no, that's not working. So in that case, I'm going to set a local, we'll just call it a observe OBS value. Let's set OBS value plus equals 1. So that just increases it by 1. We'll start it at 0. So this will just be the number of spaces. Yeah. So it starts at 4, then 3, then 2, then 1. Okay, so we're actually off by 1 in terms of the spacing values, right? Because we're supposed to start it at, wait, are we off by 1? No, we're not off by 1. We're getting the correct number of values. We need to have 4 spaces, then our sign, then a space, then that. So that's actually correct. It's just that, and we can delete the other values now. So running this again. So it looks wonky on the Roblox Studio output editor, and I'm not entirely sure why. Like it's off, but it's not off by like a whole letter, right? It's off by like half. So, and running the tests, there is the correct number of spaces, right? So this is correct, but it just doesn't look correct. Let's see. What are some optimizations that we could do? Well, there's a lot of for loops and running stuff in here, but I think this is pretty good. Again, I am not a really big fan of doing this whole setup right here where I just straight up copy and pasted the 2 for loops. And again, what we could do is that we could create a completely new function. So we can say like local function print symbols. And we can just say like amount. We could do for m is equal to 1, amount m plus 1 do, and then we can say, and this needs to take in some sort of string, so we'll say our input string, and we need to set local m0, well 1, whatever. Then we can say input string is equal to input string dot dot symbol, and at the end we will return our input string, right? And then we can probably do print symbols. Our input string is our result string. Our amount is going to be O. That's going to be our, yeah. We can clean this up a little bit. So, I mean, it's still calling the value twice. I don't think there's a way around it unless we can, I guess we could do some funky stuff where it's like we check to see if it's the second loop and then we just ignore that. But I don't think this is like, it's not like a really big optimization, right? Again, it's a cardinal sin to repeat code instead of reusing it. We're reusing as much as we can. Again, this is something that you can theoretically solve. I just don't think that it's necessarily worth it. Other than that, this is fine. There might be something better to do in terms of the Lua for loops, but I think this is about as good as it gets. I think this is a pretty solid solution for what we need. It's not a very, very extensive one. If we wanted to add on to it, we could also say like symbol, right? And we can do like some funky stuff like stars. We should put this in a parentheses. And we need to add our symbol at the end. We'll just pass this in at the end. And we'll do symbol. And this should also work, assuming that we didn't break anything there. Okay. So it doesn't seem like Lua really likes the fact that we passed it. I'm assuming that that's the main issue right there, our input string. Oh, I think it's because we're not, we need to set this. we need to set our result string so that we actually get back our returned result. Is it incrementing m by 1 and then adding 1 to it? Is that what's going on? That is what's going on. That is funky. That is some weird behavior with Lua. What? I have never seen that. Okay, so now we know. So this should actually work now then. So we can delete this. We can delete this. We can uncomment this. So result string O. So all of those should be the same. And this should end up working now. Ooh, okay. Oh, I think we're printing double because of this. Whoops. Okay, so it works. And again, we have the funkiness, but 2, 3, 4, 5. And then there's an extra dangling space here. But if we go into our here and we little spaces 0 and we do spaces plus equals 1, and then we do print spaces and little toString action. You'll see that spaces is at 4, then 3, then 2, then 1, then 0. So we're outputting the correct number of spaces. It's just that for some reason Lua, or at least the Roblox output, doesn't seem like they want to do the proper spacing for this sort of stuff. But I could also just be straight up wrong. And actually, now that I'm looking at it, this might be doing the same thing. If I do this, will this... Oh shoot, I think I might have just broken... shoot. I just did a recursion. Oh no! Oh, this is not gonna... Yeah, no. That just decided to... That just broke. That just straight up broke. Roblox Studio is just like, no, do not do that. Okay, will this make me a nice pyramid? Nope, that still does not make me a nice pyramid, but that seems to be okay. We could do -1 here. I don't think that'll change anything. No. Yeah, so it seems like Roblox is just gonna not give us our proper spacing, and it's not like it's off. Like I don't think that it's off. I think it's just how Roblox Lua does things. But I think that's about that for now. We sort of went a little bit above with this. We can use any symbol. I think even the minus sign works. Yeah, and then we can make a pyramid of @ signs if we wanted to. So that all that works. Ooh, it looks like text is the worst scaled one out there. Oh, that does not look even, but according to the math, it's supposed to be even. Not entirely sure what's going on there, but that's going to be it from me today. Thank you all so much for watching. As always, my name is MacAndSwiss, the most Asian brony on the internet, and I'll see you all next time.